Leave the very first one that we mentioned was the black acetate in the booklet. Now the black acetate is when the red, green and blue don't weaken. So in the event that the red, green and blue don't weaken, let's whip this back, the person may have a low level of energy, so low that you can't get the brain to fire. So you need to build up the vital energy of this person so they can begin to get their brain to work at all. So if we just go back to the beginning of the black acetate. So when a person's vital energy, now we call vital energy in this country, we call it vitality. And this is different from your energy within your cells or your ATP. That is your chemical energy. Okay, what makes your muscles go like that is the production and release of ATP. Okay? But the vitality is what your life energy is, or your life force, that spark behind you. Okay? Now you may have lost that spark or decreased, and in which case these people tend to weaken to the black acetate, because the loss of light coming into the eyes because of the black just lowers your vitality even more. And these people weaken, and then you're right ready for picking for a virus to come along, or a bug to come along, or a toxin, and it'd be difficult for you to detoxify because your vitality is so low. So placing the black acetate over the eyes inhibits any light from entering the brain, thus decreasing neurological activity, creating an inhibitory effect on the muscles. Vital energy, otherwise known as life energy for us, in Ayurvedic medicine it's called prana, and in Chinese it's called qi. Is different from the biochemical ATP. Low vital energy may be caused by prolonged emotional stress. Undoubtedly that's the principal cause, is when we've had lots and lots of stress, and eventually the person caves into it and just loses all interest in getting going again. The low vital energy may be caused by lack of daylight. So people who work a lot in the dark or artificial light, nutritional deficiencies and cranial faults. So they may have had bashes on the head or trauma. So low vital energy decreases the resistance to infectious diseases and promotes toxic buildup. People may require medicinal intervention. So here we may find that they're so low they may need an antibiotic to help them get over the infection, or some form of herbal, but it could be a pharmaceutical that they need, but they need something more than just a vitamin, mineral, amino acid, etc. Ways to boost their energy up is light therapy. You can use the coloured acetates on the light box. It takes about 15 minutes of light therapy to boost their energy. Or, quicker still, is to use the Miron torch for 1 minute through the umbilicus, which is what we've described. So whenever you use the Miron torch, you need to reference what it is that you're talking about. Okay? So in this case, you put the black acetate on, the strong muscle goes weak. All right? So then you do, in reference to the black acetate, you treat them with the Miron torch. So whenever we treat people, with kinesiology, we have to have 2 points, a reference beam and an object beam. That's how a hologram works. So in reference to the black, how do you like the Miron light? The answer is yes, it is. Okay. Now Miron light is a combination of ultraviolet A, the real extreme of the violet rainbow, and the infrared. And that's something you don't see because that's alpha and omega, or the beginning and end of the light coming together. And that's why you don't see that in nature. There's very few plants which have a little bit like that. Some delphiniums, and somebody else mentioned another plant the other day and said, oh yeah. But when they looked at that, they said, no, it's not quite the same. It's pretty close, but you don't get that in nature. The only people who see that are people who see it in their mind when they are in harmony with relaxation. So Sam has a nifty way. You do this. This is the instant way to meditate, isn't it? Is you give people the Miron light, you see, and ask them to visualize this in their mind, because the light's going into them, the energy of that, and they find it much easier. So you show them that first of all. That's what I want you to visualize. Then you put that there, close your eyes, and tell me when you can see it. Instant enlightenment. Shortcut, yes. Very interesting, because if you show people what they need to see, partly it's focusing their mind, and that brings it into harmony. You know, some people can empty their mind, and they achieve that when they're really not thinking left or right brain. But other people need to focus the mind onto a central point, you know, an idea or a candle or whatever it might be. So you use the light for that, because once they've seen it, they know what it is they're trying to look for. And when you see that, you've achieved harmony. Okay? And the great thing about that is what healers see just before they heal, or the energy comes through. They have to be absolutely quiet between the left and the right brain. Almost no activity there at all. And then the power comes through. Okay, so that's the mirror on light. Cranial therapy, in whatever way you're trained to do. Now, we have one colleague in the States who uses this all the time when it's cranial faults, and we found it's very, very good on anything really, subluxations. So if you've got a subluxation and you don't manipulate, therapy localize it, strong muscle goes weak, put the mirror on light on for a minute. Okay, it's amazing, does all sorts of things. So you can use it for difficult spinal problems. Anybody else found any other uses for it? We've got one practitioner who's using it to treat a leg ulcer, varicose ulcer.
It can fix the ICV.
Fixing ICVs, yeah. Anything else? Anybody else experimented around it? Play around with it.
On GV20?
You could use it, yes, you could
Yes.
put it on GV20.
Yes, yes.
The interesting thing, Paul suggested this last year because we were using the big triangular light bulbs with an LED. The LED doesn't show. It makes a blue light come out of the mirror on glass. Only the halogen or krypton bulbs will make it come out as the violet. And that violet flame is what the healing one is. Interesting LED, if you put that through there, only blue comes through. And that's not the healing. But it's because of Paul that we did this. Okay. Yeah. Well, this is just basically the bottom cut off with a glass cutter off a 100 ml bottle. So as his percentage, we're giving him the rest of the bottle. So it's fair enough, isn't it? You get most of the bottle, Paul. But we'll take just the 10%. Okay. Manipulation to the spine, especially upper cervicals, can really fire the brain up nicely. And vital energy protected the VEP spray, which I'll talk about later. And aromatherapy, which really helps fantastically well on boosting energy and treating emotional problems. You want them written down? Girls, have you got those over there, the VEP sprays with the colours, with the smells, the aromatherapy? I haven't got it on the slide for you, but they can read them out. So can you read out what the red one is? If you write them down. What? Yeah, but it's not on this production. I'll have to dig it out for you because it's not on the label. Well, you have it there. Here, I'll read it out, Frederick.
All right, for blue it's sage. You want to write it down or?
Why don't you just give her the copy?
No, we just give it to you. We send it to you. No, we send it to everybody who wants it. Yeah, I'll show you. Read it out now.
Read it out then.
Blue, sage, bergamot, yang,
Lang lang.
geranium,
Geranium.
petite grain.
Petitgrain.
All right, there you go.
Anybody know what petitgrain is?
No.
No, I'd like to know what it is as well, because it comes up quite often.
Green,
Green.
grapefruit, lime, patchouli,
Patchouli.
lavender, and peppermint. And now the last one, red, mandarin, juniper, sandalwood, and lemongrass.
Rose alb. That's. Am I still on the air? I am. Okay. Yeah. That's a rose. It's the most highly scented rose. I've forgotten what the alb stands for. Alb something. Absolute. Is it? But it comes in from Turkey or Iran. Is that right? Yeah. I don't think you can grow it over here, can you? No. But it has the most nicest aroma of all rose, apparently. But what we find is that those ones that Frederick's read out to you are generalised constitutional ones for the red, green and blue people. All right? So from a spray point of view, they're an excellent one. A little later, when we look at the heart and the emotions tomorrow, we may tailor that down to just one. Okay, and it may be one of those, it may be another one. So people, to look at their emotions, aromatherapies are very, very powerful, especially when given as a spray. Okay, So first of all, we need to know that the person has a negative emotion affecting them through the heart, because that's where we feel emotions, and then we'll find out what that emotion is, and then we'll find the spray, okay, when we can zap them. Okay. So that is, ooh. There's a flat spot. So let me just jump from there. So there's one of Gary's nice pictures of the man in black. So we do also produce a grey acetate. Now this we call a rod acetate because it picks up dim vision. Remember, it's not like the melanoopsin receptor. The rods pick up peripheral vision and dim vision, but they do pick up outlines. Okay, so I can look here, but I can see Anthony moving, or I think he's moving. Anybody know? Sure. And out of the corner of my eye, that's the rods. Okay. So when we have a problem with our rods, we tend to not have very good peripheral vision, and what this can lead to is balance problems. Okay, so it's when the world goes around you. Okay, I always use the analogy of those horrible tunnels and chairs in fun fairs where you walk across this bridge, and then you suddenly can't walk anymore because the wall is revolving around you, and you're holding on for dear life like this, trying to get to the other end. And of course, you're not moving at all. The bridge isn't moving, but the wall is doing this. Okay, so it's an illusion. That's visual. Okay, all you've got to do is do this and just look straight ahead, and then you can go across. Okay, with no problems. I've gone. I was being standing under here somewhere. Come over here. Am I back on? Back on the air here? Oh, yeah. It must be you, Anthony. There's somewhere which is robbing my battery of its power. Okay. Don't know. No, it's just dropping the power. Okay, something's sucking me. Okay, so turn me down a bit. So with the rod vestibular problems or vertigo, the world goes round you. Okay, so these are people where you ask this very important question: does the world go round you, or do you go round the world? Okay, so they say, oh, I got vertigo or dizziness, and that's the question. If the world goes around them, then it's visual. Okay, these people will weaken when you put the dim grey acetate over their eyes, or just sometimes turning the lights off and muscle testing them in a darkened room. Can you turn it down a bit? It's coming straight at me. Okay, so the rod acetate. If the problem is vestibular from the labyrinth, the rod won't make any difference. The labyrinth is semicircular canals, and this is when you go around the world. The person gets off the treatment table and flies across the room. Sometimes they can't even get out of bed here. But with this type of person, it's gone, isn't it? No, it hasn't gone. Okay, you can still hear me. Right. So this type of person, it's a labyrinthine problem. Okay, so these people will weaken when you put the finger in the ear or just above the ear, as long as you're on there, on both sides. They're nice and strong. You then take the vision out, you close the eyes, and bang, the muscle goes weak. Okay, that's a labyrinthine test. And 9 times out of 10, that's a zinc deficiency. Okay? So think of zinc. Remember that the auditory nerve, cranial nerve 8, has 2 components. It has the hearing, and it has the vestibular mechanism, the labyrinthine nerve. Okay? So those 2 feed in different locations into the brain stem. Now, 9 times out of 10, when people have got labyrinthine problems, it'll be zinc deficiency. They've usually got poor taste and smell along with that, and poor healing, which goes along with the zinc deficiency. Okay? Now, the other symptom that can come in, which is very common, is tinnitus. So people, if they're getting problems with the hearing, they get tinnitus. In other words, they get ringing in the ears, and if that ringing is continuous, It could be high pitch, low pitch. It may go up and down, may go off occasionally, but if it's continuous tinnitus, then it's neurological, it's nervous. Right? If it's pulsating tinnitus, then it's vascular. Okay, so if it's neurological tinnitus, most of those are magnesium deficiency. And because an imbalance of magnesium leads to calcium deposition, and calcium build-up in the auditory parts there will lead to irritation of the auditory nerve from the ossicle. Okay? And the auditory nerve is designed to carry sound. It does not carry pain. If you get a build-up of calcium deposits in the brachial nerve, you'll get brachial neuritis, or the same with sciatica. Calcium deposition creates pain in the nerve if it gets built up. And that's what it does in the auditory nerve for tinnitus. So you've got to displace the calcium. So to displace calcium, you need the antagonist, which is magnesium. Okay? And how do you get calcium back into solution? What carries... We know that vitamin D brings your calcium level up, but how do you get calcium into solution and make it diffusible to get into the cells? No, it's essential fatty acids. So what you need to do is to check this person, give them magnesium, and drive it in with the essential fatty acids, so you find the right oil for them. Sometimes it's vitamin B6. B6 will also, one of the major functions of B6 is to make calcium more diffusible, to get it into the cell. So we know that calcium is needed in the muscle cell to make it contract. But if you've got calcium outside the cell and it can't get in, you can't contract the muscle. Which is why with the heart, you can have a soft beat in a failing heart because the calcium is outside. Okay, it's still going inside the muscle. So by giving them the essential fatty acid combination for them and or B6, it drives it in. So once you get the calcium in, the muscle can then contract. Okay? So this would be when your oils come up and your magnesium to displace the calcium. What we find is most people actually have too much calcium. They don't have too little. They've got too much in the blood and not enough in the tissue. They need to get it in. So essential fatty acids get it in. Vitamin D will raise it, but B6 and essential fatty acids drive it in. Okay? And if you want to displace it, you build up your calcium. So this is why you'll find that calcium, the essential fatty acids, B6, are three of the most common nutrients that come up with cardiac problems. So rods pick up, as we say, peripheral vision and dim vision. So there's the rod acetate. You need to put the rod acetate, which is a grey, dark grey coloured acetate, right round, and the patient needs to hold it. We decided on the picture we would just flop it over, but you actually need to probably hold it there so no other peripheral light can get in. Okay? And turn the lights out immediately above the patient, otherwise the intensity of that will go through the acetate. And if you find a person weakens to the rod acetate, then you need something to spice the rods up to get them. So remember, the rods are there for peripheral and dim vision. These people will usually tell you that they can't drive at night. That's one of the first signs. You know, do you drive at night? Well, I tend to avoid it now, you know, I'm not so good. Their pupillary light reflex isn't so good, and they don't see things coming. And this is really, in some cases, you know, very serious, because if they don't see peripheral vision, they may have a car come straight into them. And often this occurs. They drive out because they didn't see the car or the bicycle by the side of them. Okay. So the first thing you need whenever you're dealing with vision is vitamin A, or the carotenoids. And vitamin A has to be vitamin A, which is of animal source. Carotenoids come from plants. So carotenoids can be converted into retinol, the active form of vitamin A. But to do that, they need bile salts, and they also need vitamin C, I understand. So vitamin C is really important in the eye as well. Now, they may need more help to the pigments. Lutein, being the yellow pigment, the carotenoid, is more for the rods, and zeaxanthin is more for the cones, for the colour, to strengthen it. The zinc, of course, which helps to activate the vitamin A, along with niacin, or B3. Magnesium helps to convert the cis to the trans and the trans to the cis form of retinol, which we'll look at later, and that needs magnesium. And the opsin, which is the rhodopsin protein component, is very rich in lysine. And traditionally, bilberry and strawberry and these other anthocyanidins have been very good, again, to improve the pigments at the back of the eye. But you have to test with people what it is that they actually need. So with vitamin C, I would use the new vitamin C complex, and possibly, we'll see later, urea is very good. Urea is a balancer of osmolarity. It regulates the fluid retention in the body to get the fluid just right. Right, I don't know why I put this next. I had to put it somewhere because I just happened to come across it. A really interesting article called An Allergy to Goldfish. And I thought, this is too good. Who on earth would have an allergy to goldfish? So I looked it up. And it was all about this child who went absolutely ballistic when they ate goldfish and had real hyperactivity. And then I discovered that goldfish is a type of crisp in America, or chip as they would call it, laced with colours in the shape of a fish, and they're called goldfish. And children can't resist these, apparently. And they're obviously laced with MSG and aspartame or whatever else. So this book, this guy wrote a paper, An Allergy to Goldfish, highlighting labelling laws for food additives in the US. And he put down there the big 8. And I thought, oh, that's good, just to remind ourselves. The big eight allergens: cow's milk, which probably a third of the world suffer from lactose intolerance. May not be a true allergen, but it's a lactose intolerance. Egg, maybe the yolk, maybe the white. Peanuts and other tree nuts. Fish. Fish is quite a big one. You know, in the orthodox allergy world out there, they have produced a lot of people with allergy to fish. So people usually, when they've had an allergic reaction to fish, don't do it again, particularly if it's shellfish. Soy, so probably the rest of the world who aren't blue don't like and get on very well with soy. And wheat for the red people. So those are the big 8, which you might want to think about. But I, at the end of the day, usually run through the big ones, and then I get the patient to bring their own foods and drinks in. That's safer, because they could be sensitive to one but not to another. You know, it's a variety, and you don't know what it is. You know, they may be okay on wholemeal bread and not on white, or vice versa. So it's better to find what the person takes in their mouth in the form that they take it in their mouth. Okay? So if it's raw, then they can bring it in raw. If it's cooked, then they should bring it in the cooked state. So these are probably responsible for 90% of the allergic food reactions. After that, it could be anything. Okay. There goes the fishy. I think, Sam, you sent me that one. A while back, I just found it. I thought, oh, that's a good one, intermission. So, how are we doing time-wise? Are we... Could we have 10 minutes? Yeah, okay. It's only tea and coffee. There's nothing perishable. Right, bad fats. This is a new chapter. Bad fats and oils. I was going to say bad fats and good fats. That's Udo Erasmus's book, isn't it? Bad Fats and Good Fats. Right, so the big debate at the moment, all across the papers a couple of weeks ago, margarine, as bad as people always suspected. Now they're saying, oh, butter is not so bad after all, in moderation, but margarine is bad. So they're demanding, this is from the chair, that the medical profession should apologise to the nation for making them have to eat margarine and vegetables for the last 30 or 40 years, when they should have been having it. They've noticed substantially since the introduction of margarines, and away from animal fats and butter, coronary heart disease has gone up, not down. And eggs, the same. Now they admit that eggs are actually good for you, because free-range eggs contain lecithin and inositol, which break fats down, break cholesterol and triglycerides down. Battery eggs do not. So factory farm eggs are low in choline and low in inositol, so they don't actually help to break it down. So a lot of the research was actually flawed right from the beginning. And the reason was money, was to sell the margarine. And that's all. There was no evidence ever at the beginning that it was any healthier, and they kept it quiet all those time. So an unsaturated oil, let's make sure we all understand, a fatty acid has a methyl end, in other words, a CH3, and it has a carboxyl other end, COOH. And then it has a number of carbons in between. So if these number of carbons was 6, it would be called a 6, carbon 6. If it's 12, 18, it would be carbon 12, 18. You'll see that all these are saturated with hydrogens because carbon has a valency of 4, so you've got 2 hydrogens and it links with the carbon next door. That's fully saturated. So if there's no double bonds here, it's a saturated oil. If there's a double bond, which means that we've got 2 bonds here and only 1 carbon here and here, it's an unsaturated. And because it's only got 1 double bond, it's a monounsaturated. And if there's 2 there, it'd be 2 saturated or polyunsaturated. And if it's got 6 double bonds, it's still a polyunsaturated. Okay? So you must all know those. So fats or lipids are divided into those that are at room temperature or solid or liquid. So fats would be solid, oils would be liquid. And they can be complex substances like phospholipids, glycosphingolipid and lipoproteins. So we mentioned about saturates and unsaturates. So to make margarine, soya beans, corn, cotton seeds, etc., all the rubbishy oils. Oils extracted by high temperature, that's always good for oils, isn't it, particularly vegetable oils. Remaining fractions of oils removed with hexane. They always use solvents. This is worrying. A lot of vegetable oils, I had no idea, are removed by solvents. Okay, cold press oils are not, okay, but the commercially produced all have hexane in them and other solvents. Oils now are rancid, steam cleaned to remove all the vitamins and antioxidants, but pesticides and solvents remain. Oils are then mixed with nickel. Not good news for the green people here. Oils with catalysts subject to hydrogen gas, in other words, hydrogenation to make them more solid at high temperature. Again, very good for the oils. Soap-like emulsifiers are mixed in. This oil steam cleaned again to remove the horrible odour. Grey colour. So margarine is now grey, okay, which is removed by bleaching. Artificial flavours, synthetic vitamins and natural colour are added. Natural colour, coal tar extracts usually. Mixed, it is packaged into blocks or tubs and advertising promotions margarine as a health food. Okay, so, and we all fell for this, didn't we? Or patients, yes, patients fell for it. This was the tragedy. And the first I came across this was in 1980s when, with the increase in skin cancer in Australia, was blamed on the thinning of the ozone. And so they looked at ways of preventing this over the Antarctic and reducing the exposure of the ultraviolet. And then a dermatologist from Brisbane wrote in The Lancet a quite outrageous article that in his opinion it was nothing to do with the ozone, but since Australia introduced vegetable margarines into the diet instead of butter. And he naturally was laughed out of town. But now they begin to realise that he was right, because they didn't have the essential fatty acids anymore of the linoleic and the alpha-linolenic, which are essential, and from those two we can make all other oils. So this came out in a number of press releases last week. This was with the Mail Online, taking a sample of middle-aged Australian men. So Australia took this a lot, have either experienced heart attacks or suffered from angina. Half were advised to cut their animal fat intake and replace it with the safflower, which is similar to sunflower, and safflower oil margarine, while the other half continue to eat as normal. If the unholy alliance of government, nutritionists and the food processing industry were right, and margarine really was better for you, as they've been claiming for decades, you'd expect the men who switched to safflower to live longer and have better healthy lives. The exact opposite turned out to be true. Those who ate more of the safflower-derived products were almost twice as likely to die from causes including heart disease. Suddenly, margarine isn't looking so healthy option as those expensive marketing campaigns claimed it to be, which is good. But this will go on for another 20 years before eventually people won't touch it anymore. Okay? It takes a long time. You know, people get ingrained in this idea, and it's in their subconscious, it's programmed in there, it's patterned, and they're very difficult to move. Okay? And many doctors are just coming into it, aren't they, with nutritional, advising people, don't eat eggs, you know, your cholesterol's too high, and eat margarines and vegetable oils. The only decent oils, as we know, are going to be cold-pressed organic. So the first thing we need to look at, and this is a bigger problem than probably trans fats, is rancid fats. Rancid means they've oxidized. So oxidative rancidity is associated with the degradation by oxygen in the air via free radical process. The double bonds of an unsaturated oil can undergo cleavage, that means cutting out, releasing volatile aldehydes and ketones. The process can be suppressed by the exclusion of oxygen. So in other words, you need to fill up an oil into a canister right to the top, so there's no air in there, or by the addition of antioxidants. And the major antioxidant in all oils that nature provides is vitamin E. And this is really an interesting subject because E is a mixture of 4 tocopherols and 4 tocotrienols, which work differently for different pathways. Vitamin C, as we'll see, which helps to recycle the E. Glutathione, which requires alpha-lipoic acid and selenium. And oxidation readily occurs within unsaturated oils. So unsaturated oils are very unstable if they don't have the nature's own antioxidants in them. So this is what happens. So here we've got our polyunsaturated fatty acid, or PUFA here, say in the phospholipid. That would be where they come from. And we get a reactive oxygen species, which is R here, and oxygen. So we produce a free radical on the PUFA. Okay? So in other words, we have a free radical oxidized phosphatidyl lipid within our membranes. Now what that would do, property-wise, it makes it go hard and stiff. So the more oxidation it is to the cell membranes, the stiffer it is, and the cell membrane then can't work in the way that it should and allow oxygen and nutrients in and toxins out. So this free radical is quenched over to a PUFA here by tocopherol, or vitamin E. So you see tocopherol here becomes oxidized, and tocopherol takes the free radical. The trouble is that the tocopherol becomes the free radical. Okay? So the tocopherol itself absorbs the free radical and becomes a free radical. Okay? Now the oil itself is protected. So nature, what it does in your wheat germ oil and your other oils is supplies the vitamin E. But as time goes on, once you've milled your wheat or made your oil, what will happen is that E, which is naturally present, will take the oxidation if it's exposed to the air and the light, and it'll become oxidized. And once the E is used up and is fully, there's no more E left, the oil becomes rancid. Okay, it becomes oxidized. Do you see what I mean? So the more E there is in there, the more protection, it'll last a bit longer. Okay? But you've got to remember, E on its own will only last for a certain period of time before it's absorbed. So what in the cell membranes in the body, what happens is we recycle E. And we can recycle by some other person who will take the hot potato, in other words, the free radical. And in this case, it's vitamin C. So vitamin C absorbs the free radical here, on this side, the reduced form, and it becomes oxidized. So round here, it takes the free radical, and it becomes oxidized, or the free radical. Now, vitamin C can be recycled. Okay, and in order to recycle vitamin C, we need alpha-lipoic acid. Now, that's another use of alpha-lipoic acid. So, Janice, you put down it was an antioxidant. It's a glucose stabilizer. It helps with the energy pathway. We know it's a detoxifier of toxic metals. So the fifth use of it is to recycle vitamin C. So 10% of vitamin C, if you make a mixture of vitamin C with 10% of it as alpha-lipoic acid, the amount of vitamin C you need is then very much less. So people who require high levels of vitamin C, such as in malignancy and things, will find that the amount of vitamin C that they need is really very, very small if they recycle it with alpha-lipoic acid. So in our vitamin C's, we do a straight vitamin C as a powder or as a capsule. We do a vitamin C with alpha-lipoic acid, because you need less of it then. And we also do a vitamin C complex, which is what we'll talk about, which has a lot of other things in it, the tyrosine enzyme and the bioflavonoids, and alpha-lipoic acid. So the vitamin C complex includes all these, so you keep recycling it. Okay. So the PUFA here can then be metabolized down this pathway and through the hydrogen peroxide mechanism here. And to recycle this, we need glutathione peroxidase, which needs the selenium. But the main way the body is going to get rid of the free radical is vitamin E, and then inside the cell membrane here, in the water-soluble components, will be vitamin C. So E, C, and glutathione peroxidase and alpha-lipoic acid are our main substances. Now here's a little chart of vitamin E. Now you'll see here, top of the chart there, the amount of milligrams per 100 gram wheat germ oil. But you won't get good wheat germ oil. It's very difficult to acquire. We've acquired it, luckily, organic, cold pressed. Just needs to be kept in the fridge. Okay, this is very important because you don't want it outside, and very, very good. Not frozen, in the fridge. Okay, 150 milligrams per 100 gram. Next down the chart is 41, long way down, less than a third sunflower, 34 safflower, 15 to 26 nuts and bolts, nuts and oils, 15 palm oil. That's sold as a good source, but green vegetables, etc., leafy vegetables, 15 to 21 avocados, 1.1 to 1.5 asparagus, and oh, look at our friend down here, soy. Okay, that's where soy fits in. It's low as sweet potatoes. Okay, interesting, because all vitamin E is extracted from soy commercially. Why? Because there's so much soy around. Okay, and all soy with vitamin E is GM, unless it says otherwise. Okay, so I have found every single capsule I've ever tested now of vitamin E, alpha tocopherol, mixed tocopherols, weaken people. And why does it weaken them? Because it's rancid. The oil is rancid by the time it's gone into the capsule. Okay? So I ever found people needed vitamin E. I'm not surprised, because the oil was rancid that you're testing them with. No wonder the body said, I don't want this. Okay? But if you give them good, fresh wheat germ oil, then they do strengthen. And a lot of people need it. Wonderful stuff. Okay, vitamin E, phospholipids of the mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum, plasma membranes possess affinities for this particular vitamin. Now, before we break, this is really the crux of the matter. Oxidative stability is a measure of an oil's fat resistance to oxidation. So this is what I mentioned about my friend Eric Perotti and his oil when he took his olives to market. The last bit is, this final bit, is the oil rancid? Because the process takes place through a chain reaction, the oxidation reaction has a period when it is relatively slow, because there's a natural amount of vitamin E in it, and it can recycle those free radicals until it's all used up, before it suddenly speeds up. That's when we get to no vitamin E left. The time for this to happen is called induction time, and it is repeatable under identical conditions. There are a number of ways to measure the progress of the oxidation reaction. The most important method, most current method, is the Rancimat method. In other words, rancid measurement. The Rancimat method is carried out using an air current of temperatures between 50 and 220 degrees centigrade. The volatile oxidation products, largely formic acid, are carried by the air current into the measuring vessel, where they absorb dissolved in the measuring fluid, which is distilled water. By continuous measurement of the conductivity, oxidation curves can be generated. The cusp point of the oxidation curve, point where rapid rise gives the induction, is the time of rancidification. All very interesting, but how can we put that into practice? Simple. Formic acid. Okay, that's the byproduct. Okay, I thought, I know what formic acid is. It's what bees or wasps or red ants certainly give you when they bite you. So in your kits or around will be formic acid. Let's have a look. Now, should be there, heart extract. We've got malonaldehyde, ammonium chloride, iodine, formic acid. So what we need is some oils. Julie, is there any biscuits out there? Could we borrow a biscuit? Oh, everybody's there. Now, the best example of this really is margarine. But any oil will do. I think they stopped probably serving lunch by now. But you can check this. This is how you check an oil, all right? And this is really important because you don't want to, for yourself or your patients, really use an oil that's rancid. Okay, I think we'd all agree probably that it's not a good idea. What is that one? The shortbread, is it? Or whatever. Right. Who wants to be a volunteer? Paul, you look fit and healthy. So what we do here is we will just pop yourself down on your back. We won't check your heart today. Okay. So the way to check an oil is to take a strong muscle Pop that one down. That's it. Pull the knee out. And to test with the oil. Now you might want to put the whole bottle on him. If you're not sure, get the patient to bring their oils in. Patients have difficulty accepting what we're about to see. And because if you tell them that the oil is rancid and they're eating that or drinking it, they're going to go rancid. Okay, and this is a hard thing to accept, that basically their cell membranes are going to go rancid. In other words, you're producing an oxidized oil into them. So you're nice and strong. Don't go. On the left brain or the right brain. Right. So both brains saying that's all right. Okay. Now just to prove that you're not just allergic to red ants, we'll put formic acid on. Okay. So formic acid is a carbon 1 fatty acid, saturated fatty acid, and he's fine on that. And then we'll put the biscuits, because these biscuits always contain oils, don't they? It might be supposedly butter, but I doubt it. You're shortbread. Okay, so with the formic acid on, there's just no power there at all. So his body's saying, don't give me that. Okay, so that's a very good way of knowing if something's gone rancid. So the test for simple, because it's the rancidification, is what they measure when an oil is rancid, is the giving out the amount of formic acid. So if the formic acid weakens the person with, in relationship to the question here, again, holographic, reference point, object beam. Okay, in reference to the shortbread, okay, what do you think about formic acid? Okay, if he stays strong with that and with the formic acid, he could have this with his cup of tea, but he's not going to. That's as close as you get to it. Okay, so you should have formic acid. Formic acid is in the fatty acid kit if you've got the old fatty acid kits. Okay, so we can see that the byproduct of this, when a lipid becomes an unsaturated oil, becomes free radical, and the lipid becomes radicalized. With this, we produce a lipid peroxyl radical, and this will go on, this lipid peroxide, to produce a byproduct called malonaldehyde. And malonaldehyde is when there's a build-up of rancid fats in your body. And this is really very, very important, obviously, with people with neurological problems, because if you're going rancid, it means your cell membranes aren't going to be working properly. So there should be a marker there called malonaldehyde. Okay? This is the marker that is used for knowing whether we've got a rancidification of our unsaturated fatty acids. So practically everybody shows to this who weakens to shortbread. Because you already weaken that, which probably indicates your amount of rancidification is too high. Okay, so he weakens to malonaldehyde, which means he's getting in too much, he's composed of too much of rancid fats. So he's peroxidizing too many of the oils. What should he be thinking about taking? Vitamin E, vitamin C. Okay, but particularly vitamin E, because it's fat soluble, and we're looking in the fat soluble membranes. And remember, the area which is fattiest in the whole body is the brain and spinal cord. 70% of the dry weight is fat, and most of that is unsaturates. So it becomes rancid quicker than anything else. So this is the importance that you'll start when you start using wheat germ oil to test with, rather than vitamin E in a capsule, which is probably rancid. That's why it doesn't show. Okay, we'll patch you up later. Now remember vitamin E. We dyslexia.
Rancid brain.
Rancid.
Rancid brain.
Oh, rancid brain.
Dyslexia.
Yeah, well, it can cause all sorts of problems.
Yeah.
Remember what I said earlier about the cattle that were fed vitamin E deficient diet? 6 months later, 50% of the cattle dropped dead.
Yeah.
They didn't get ill. There was no signs of illness at all. They just dropped dead because of necrosis of the heart tissue, and the heart just burst, and it was instant. And that's what occurs with people in the same way.
Yes.
They don't have any symptoms, and bang, they go like a puncture in the tyre.
Did you just test the malonaldehyde by itself?
Yes, left and right. Always test things left and right, because sometimes things will only weaken on one brain than the other. Okay?
I thought previously done with formic acid.
Yeah, formic acid was to see if there's rancid in the biscuit or in the oil. So use the formic acid if you want to test a product to see whether it's rancid. You know, I have bottles of oil in my treatment room, and I use them time and time again. And then I'm not sure whether they've gone off. You know, the number of times you've opened it, you know, and you've got oxygen in there. It could be 6 months old, that bottle. Not sure, you know, but that's the way. You just pour a little bit, teaspoon in the glass, all right, and just put the formic acid with it. And if they go crash, don't touch that oil. Chuck it down the sink, all right? Because you don't want to drink rancid oils, do you? Because you'll take those up into your cell membranes. And you think what people are doing all the time, they're taking in rancid oils. So when would they last have got a decent slug of vitamin E? Because the only way you'll get vitamin E is from your good oils within your diet. And they've got to be cold pressed, organic, and the best one of those, it's the best, much higher supply than anything else, is wheat germ oil. Okay? Certainly, you will not find synthetic vitamin E to work at all. You know, vitamin E acetate, vitamin E, what's the other form? Palmitate, I think, isn't it? Yeah, vitamin E palmitate, vitamin E acetate. They just don't work at all. Unfortunately, they put those in to powder dry forms of multiples because they need to show that they've got some E, but it just doesn't work. I've never found a synthetic one work at all.